Hello, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to the Virtual House Church. My name is Jake Grant. Today, I'm going to be hosting Virtual House Church. Usually, we have Juan Carlos on, but Juan is traveling and doing some things with family right now, so he's unable to join us. I probably will be hosting for the next 3 weekends or so, and hopefully, I'll be able to have some guests on. But if not, it'll probably just be me, as it will be in today's Virtual House Church study. Like our little intro there said, we don't claim to be pastors. We don't claim to be teachers, just fellow students along with you as we're studying out the word. And continuing in the footsteps of our brother Rob Skiba, who got Virtual House Church started many years ago. After Rob passed away this last year, Juan and I, along with Sheila's blessing, decided to continue on the Virtual House Church as a place to study the word and fellowship with all you guys. And so that's why we're doing this, is to just, really find a love for the word of the Most High, to find the little hidden gems and the beautiful things that we can apply and study. And so before we get into it, like as we always do, we like to share the Virtual House Church website that Rob spent a lot of his time last year working on, updating. And so if you wanted to check out the Virtual House Church website, you can go to vhc.ephraimowakening.com. That's vhc.ephraimowakening.com. And while I've not been super consistent in updating it with our recent studies, this is full of so many amazing resources that Rob left us with. We can go here and access the Virtual House Church store, where you can get Torah portion workbooks, several calendars. Also, it has some great breakdowns discussing the writings of Paul that are often twisted and misunderstood. It's a great place to find fellowship. You can add yourself to the 119 Ministries Fellowship Finder Map, I believe it is. You can see people all over the world who are coming to realize that the whole Word of Yah applies to us today. And so if you need to find local fellowship, as Hebrews says, don't forsake the assembling together of yourselves, even more so as you see that day approaching, but spur one another on to good works. Not only that, but we have defending the Messiah. Why is it that Yeshua, Jesus Christ, as is said in the English, why is it that he is the Messiah? Why is it that so many people, those who have fallen into Judaism or they've even misunderstood who Christ is, why are they rejecting Messiah as Jesus or Yeshua as the Messiah? Well, Rob added a ton of great studies and videos defending and explaining why Christ is the Messiah, why Yeshua is the Messiah. So this is a great resource. And today, all across the world, people are studying the traditional Torah portion, and that is Korach. So that's Numbers 16, 1 through 18. However, here on Virtual House Church, since Rob, for many years as well, I joined with him back in 2017. We've been doing this for so long. There are many Torah portion cycles where the study of the traditional Torah portion was gone through. We have a lot of those recordings all saved here on the website. Some really great resources. And if today we get done with our Second Samuel study, maybe we'll look at some interesting little notes here regarding this Torah portion that the whole world, for the most part, is studying. And that's why Torah portions are so beautiful, why they're really cool that as a form of Bible study, is because all these people all around the world are consistently studying the same scriptures together. And so when they come together to discuss the word, the Most High can reveal these beautiful gems. And so it's almost like the Most High reveals different things to different people. And when we all bring it together, we get a bigger, wider picture of what the scriptures mean and why it should be applied to us today. So, and before we get into it, just want to show an updated version of what we will be studying here on Virtual House Church, which is the Second Samuel Torah portions that Juan Carlos came up with. And it is right here. You can see we are on week 36 currently. We just finished Second Samuel, and before that, Judges and Joshua. But here we can see Samuel Bet, 2 Samuel. We're going to be studying through chapter 4 through 5, and in English, shepherd my people Israel. And this is considering when King David, actually became the king over all of Israel, not a divided Israel, as he was running from Saul. And in the title in Hebrew, I'll give it a shot. Tireh et Ami et Yisrael. All right. So if you guys want to look in advance of the coming weeks and write down notes of what to study up for each coming Shabbat, next week will be 2 Samuel 6 through 7. And so that's a great resource. I think it's so cool that Juan Carlos is breaking that down for us, but also that he added the Hebraic title, as similarly in the traditional Torah portions of the first 5 books, it has the Hebrew name. So Bereshit, or Genesis, is the first Torah portion, it's in the beginning is what it means in the English, and that's the first Torah portion of the Bible, right? But that's because those are the first phrases or words in that particular cycle, or something tied to the meaning of the portion. So I think it's so cool that Juan Carlos broke those down. I have the chat up here on YouTube. So those of you who are in the live chat, please feel free to add your comments, discussions, any ideas or thoughts or inspirations that come to you while we're studying. I'll be looking in the chat and maybe having some dialogue back and forth as we discuss this Torah portion in 2 Samuel. And also we have some new music today, new worship music from my sister-in-law, Felicia. So I'm excited to play that for you guys. And we also have an awesome trivia at the end of Virtual House Church today. So those of you who are tuning in live, congratulations. You get an opportunity to win probably our biggest prize yet. It means what that prize is Sheila has offered a full set of Torah portion workbooks for the winner of this week's trivia. So this week's trivia I tried to make it pretty difficult. I have some questions about the book of Numbers and this week's traditional Torah portion, but also what we're studying in 2 Samuel. So be on your toes for that. Stay tuned to the very end, and you'll have a chance to win a full set of Torah portion workbooks that Rob published. So let's see here. What do we want to do first? I say let's go ahead and kick Virtual House Church off with some awesome worship music. And we'll play these 2 new songs from my sister-in-law, get ourselves in the mood. Before I do that, I'm just going to say a prayer to kick us off here at Virtual House Church. Here we go. Abba, Father, thank you for our whole life. Abba, Father, thank you for your creation. We praise you and we worship you and we bless your name, for you are the King of the universe. Abba, Father, I ask that you reveal to us the truths in your word that you would want us to apply. Father, I ask for the Virtual House Church family to be blessed as we study your word. Father, to be blessed in our lives and our families. Father, help us be pleasing to your sight and to walk out our faith with not just words, but also action. So, Abba, Father, I bless you one more time. Thank you for your Shabbat and the day that you have given us to set apart so that we can focus on you. Abba, Father, I thank you one more time also for Yeshua, salvation, and thank you for the Virtual House Church family, and thank you for guys like Juan Carlos and Skiba who set all this Virtual House Church stuff up so that we could be studying together, and I pray this in Yeshua's name, amen. All right, thank you, everybody. We are going to go ahead and play some awesome new music. You haven't heard this before. And I got 2 songs. I believe the first song we're going to play is We Worship You Alone, and then followed by a song called Then Shall the Virgin Rejoice, all performed by my sister-in-law, Felicia. She's just a beautiful, amazing singer. And here we go.
We worship you, oh God, we worship you, you alone, standing in your presence, before your holy throne, before your holy throne, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you alone, we worship you alone, we worship you, Almighty God, we worship you, you alone, standing in your presence, before your holy throne, before your holy throne, we worship you, Almighty God, we worship you, you alone, standing in your presence, before your holy throne, before your holy throne, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you alone, we worship you alone, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you, we worship you alone, we worship you alone. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. Worthy, worthy, worthy is the Lamb of God. Worthy, worthy, worthy is the Lamb upon the throne, is the Lamb upon the throne. We worship you, We worship you alone. We worship you alone. We worship you alone.
Awesome. Oh, that was such great worship. I definitely married up, guys. Let's just put it that way. My wife and my sister-in-law just have both beautiful voices from a very beautiful family. So I was very blessed to get to marry into their family, and so we're gonna go ahead and play one more song. This is a much more kind of joyful atmosphere song. It's called "Then Shall the Virgin Rejoice," and then we'll get into our Torah portion study.
Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old men together. Lie, 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 lie. For I will turn their mourning into joy, and I will comfort them, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, both young men and old men together. Lie, 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 lie. For I will turn their mourning into joy, and I will comfort them, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows. Then shall the virgin rejoice in the dance, young men and old men together. Lie, 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 lie. For I will turn their mourning into joy, and I will comfort them, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows. They shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows, and they shall rejoice, rejoice, rejoice from their sorrows.
All right. That was great. Thank you, Felicia, for doing those songs for us. All right. So we are going to be getting into the study today. We are studying through 2 Samuel 4 through 5. And we're just going to start off by reading through. And if anything stands out to anybody or you have any comments, feel free to put them into the chat over here. And I'll try to be bouncing back and forth with what everybody is sharing. So we are going to be looking here. And I'll just hop over here as I'm reading through. We're going to begin. And when Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. And Saul's son had 2 men that were captains of bands. The name of one was Banah, and the name of the other Rechab. And the sons of Rimmon, a Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin. For Beeroth was also reckoned to Benjamin. So just so you guys know, like, pay close attention, because the trivia at the end, a lot of these are going to be significant. So you want to be the fastest one to answer to get one of those, the free set of workbooks from Sheila. Sorry, I don't mean to keep plugging that. I'm just really excited. It's going to be really cool. But all right, so keep paying attention. Make notes. All right. And the Beerothites fled to Gittim and were sojourners there unto this day. So just starting off, it's interesting to me just the significance of the fact that Saul was of Benjamin, and we see throughout history how Benjamin was this significant tribe that seemed to make a lot of mistakes. And we know during the time of the judges, they were one of the least numbered of the tribes because of the great war that happened between Israel and Benjamin. But we also have significant people coming from Benjamin, such as the Apostle Paul, to name one. But it's just interesting because in the way that it says that they fled to Gittim and were sojourners there unto this day, it kind of gives you a kind of a location that the Apostle Paul, for example, his ancestors were likely located around this area. And it continues on to say, and Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. And he was 5 years old when the tidings came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. And it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame. And his name was Mephibosheth. So we're going to learn in 2 Samuel chapter 9 more about this story of this character that we're given a backstory here about Mephibosheth, this guy who became lame. And, spoiler alert, he is invited to eat and live in the palace of King David for all the days of his life. And just a very, very beautiful way that David preserved the seed of Jonathan, his best beloved friend. And now there's some aspects of this scripture that we can apply. Perhaps, the nurse, whenever you're in a rush and holding a young baby, take it easy. You don't want to drop them on their legs and make them lame. That's very brash, blatant kind of things we can learn from this. But it was in fear that all these people were running away, in fear that David was going to kill them, to execute all the people. And so just to give a little bit of explanation here, something that is very common throughout history, and we see it extremely practiced in like the Roman Empire and in several other places, is something called regicide. And regicide is when all of the other possible people that could have a claim to the throne are then offed by the monarch that is resuming power. But we see a discrepancy here with David, where David doesn't operate in such a fashion. And it says regicide is the purposeful killing of a monarch or sovereign or the polity of a polity, and is often associated with the usurpation of power. And regicide can also be when a person responsible for the killing, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, this is something that we saw in a lot of kingdoms throughout history, where pretty much all of the descendants and people that would possibly have a claim for the throne were completely wiped out. And this is what the people were thinking was going to happen when David assumed the throne, was he was just going to kill all of the descendants of King Saul. But of course, the story continues on here, and we learn something different about David that all the people assumed. And so it goes on to say, and the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, Rechab, and Banah went and came about the heat of the day to the house of Mephibosheth, who lay on a bed at noon. So there's something interesting here. I'm going to read the next few verses. And they came hither into the midst of the house as though they would have fetched wheat. They came in deceptfully, and they smote him under the fifth rib. And Rechab and Banah, his brother, escaped. And when they came into the house, he lay on his bedchamber, and they smote him and slew him and beheaded him and took his head and gat them away through the plain all night. So there's something interesting in the Proverbs that I wanted to point out in relation to what happened here. I know later on it's going to be called that Ishbosheth, one of the sons of Saul, was actually a righteous man. David actually calls him a righteous man. But I wanted to read this in the Proverbs just with the mindset of, isn't it interesting that he was on his bed just with a little bit of the arms folding, as we see here referred in Proverbs 6:10 through 20, we'll read. And it says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. And there's maybe some possible winking at this thing that he was laying on. Could he be sick? All these things are possibilities. We're speculating, but what if he was just taking a nap because it was a little hot, or was he sleeping in? Was he just so comfortable that these guys were able to get in there? But also, we're going to continue on, and we're going to apply some of the rest of these proverbs to what happens to these two captains that come in and take off his head for David. So, and they brought the head of Ishbosheth unto David to Hebron, and said to king, behold, the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, thine enemy, which sought thy life. And the Lord hath avenged my lord the king this day of Saul and his seed. And these guys apparently didn't realize how much that David honored and respected Saul. And David answered Rechab and Banah, his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said unto them, as the Lord liveth, who has redeemed my soul out of all adversity. I think this is kind of giving a preface to why he doesn't have such ill will against King Saul's progeny, right? Is that when one told me, saying, behold, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good tidings, I took hold of him and slew him in Ziklag, who thought that I would have given him a reward for his tidings. This is probably why these guys were doing this, right? They were bringing the head of one of the descendants of Saul to say, hey, look what we did. Look what we, we took care of one of Saul's, kids for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Not recognizing that what they were doing was in wickedness. They were just killing basically an innocent guy. So it's kind of sad. I'm looking over here in the chat to see if we have any thoughts added to these first few verses in 2 Samuel 4. We have somebody says, Proverbs 20:13, do not love sleep, lest you become poor. Open your eyes and be satisfied with bread. Maybe that's why breakfast is so important, you think? It's kind of a motivation for you to get up. Is that kind of what that verse is hinting at in Proverbs 20:13? I don't know. You guys tell me. But anyways, we're going to continue on here. How much more when wicked men have slain a righteous person, he calls him righteous in his own bed, shall I not therefore require his blood of your hand and take you away from the earth? And David commanded his young men, and they slew them and cut off their hands and their feet and hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. And they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. Now, this is pretty brutal. Of course, a punishment for wicked men. And there's a scripture that says, it's in, let me see here. I know Galatians talks about it in reference to the Messiah, but Deuteronomy 21:23, his body shall not remain all night on the tree. You shall bury him the same day. For hanged man is cursed by God. Right? Breaking down that these wicked men, David was like, curse those guys. They're wicked. They killed an innocent person. So let's continue on here. Man, David was a hardcore guy. No wonder when he was like, please let me build the temple, the Most High's like, your hands are bloody, very bloody. You let your son do it. He's a little bit less of a hardcore just warrior. But somebody said here, David had no tolerance for bloodthirsty unrighteousness for sure, and impure motives. It just really it goes to show us that sometimes when we go to the above and beyond ladder climbing, cutthroat mentality that the world really impresses on people to operate this way so that you can get ahead, that sometimes you're going to encounter a righteous person that'll call you out for the wickedness, the backstabbing. And that's what these two guys were doing. They were pretty much just ladder climbing, right? Trying to get ahead by bringing in the head of Ishbosheth, right? Ishbosheth. What an interesting name. All right, so continuing on. Then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Something that I think is interesting here is perhaps the reason that the Benjamites would have been willing to show up is because of the kindness that David showed by killing these guys that were like, look who we killed. Because all the Benjamites were probably aware of these people going in and massacring, well, the at least these two guys who massacred the sons of Saul, and they were probably really upset about it. I mean, think about his families, think about the Avengers of Blood coming after those guys, because it said they, took off running all through the night. So because David avenged the blood of the Benjamites, likely this is one of the justifications of them showing up, because it says all the tribes of Israel came. And we know previously that the Benjamites didn't want to participate in making David king, but they saw that he was a righteous king, likely. Here's a comment from Felix. Maybe he understood that if he could not forgive, then God could not forgive him. Perhaps that's how David viewed Saul, is if he couldn't forgive Saul for all that he was doing against him, then how can the Most High forgive us for the things we do against him, the Most High, right? So there's an interesting question here I wanted to address. Catherine asked a question. She said, I do have a question. It is said not to kill, thou shalt not murder, right? Yet Israel killed, apart from the Nephilim, but they killed each other and other humans. Why is that okay? Now, I understand in my perspective that war and warfare is a different category when it comes to thou shalt not murder. And the reason that is because warfare is in defense of your loved ones, in defense of your home. And if you don't fight and stop the enemy, then they are going to ravage you, kill your family. And that's why a lot of this warfare back and forth is a little bit different than just the basic commandment of thou shalt not murder. Of course, in a perfect world, nobody would kill anybody, but being able to defend one's home, defend oneself in an affront or it's just like if a wolf came into your backyard and tried to attack one of your children, you would defend your children at the risk of your life, yes. But in the same sense, people can turn into beasts that just want to kill and murder. And so defending in the name of righteousness is very different, but it's not ideal, of course. Killing. But anyways, a lot of the time somebody said that Israel should have put their trust in Yah and not in man. Praise Yah. Amen. That's a good reply as well. Sometimes they got themselves into those situations where they were forced to fight and to kill because they didn't seek the Most High in his direction. But the Most High also times would tell them to go into battle, to war, to kill the Philistines and the Moabite, all these people that were an affront to Israel's sovereignty and were probably doing a lot of bad things, hurting people. Their idolatry that was tainting Israel had to be getting out of the land. So that's a lot of the reasons that the Most High commanded them to cut those people off. All right, so let's keep reading here. Also in times past, when Saul was king over us, thou wast that he was led us out and brought us in Israel. And the Lord said to thee, thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be a captain over Israel. I think it's really interesting the parallels that we have with King David and the Mashiach, right? Yeshua feeding Israel. Yeah, brings to mind the feeding of the 5,000, right? The some of the roles that the Messiah parallels with David, King David, and we know there's this Jewish perspective that the Messiah comes in two fashions. That he comes as Messiah ben Yosef, the suffering servant. And so many parallels, guys. If you haven't looked into the parallels with Joseph and the Messiah, it's mind-blowing. Just in the story itself. Anyways, moving on to the next verse, there's something here. So the first coming, sorry, jumping around here, but Messiah ben David, the conquering king, is likened to the second coming of the Messiah. So that's why there's a lot of parallels with King David and the Messiah and his return to rule over Zion. So all the elders of Israel came to King at Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. So there's something here I wanted to look at. If I can find it, I had a breakdown of the rights and duties of kingship in Israel. And this is an interesting discussion of what does it mean when David was made king? What does it mean? What is his roles? So let's read here. The kings of Israel and Judah were believed to serve as Yahuwah's agents to rule the nation. They were expected to observe his covenants and laws to defend the nation and engage in offensive war when deemed necessary, in regards to that question earlier, and to rule people with justice, the Hebrew word mishpat, and righteousness, zedekah. And although they were granted wide powers to carry out these tasks, the ancients believed that the kings would suffer divine punishment if they violated the covenants and laws. And we can see that with the wicked kings and how they brought judgment and brought warfare to their people, eventually ending up in the dispersion and the captivity. But Yahuwah's prophets would generally announce such judgments against wayward kings, and when the court officials and priests failed to act. Biblical authors claim that the kings of Israel and Judah were divinely chosen and that they were expected to abide by the covenant. For example, Deuteronomy 17, or 14 through 17, talks about, let's see here. When you come into the land your Lord God is giving you and taking possession of it and settle in it, you will say, I will set a king over me, right? This is when they chose Saul. Sorry, you guys can't see this very well. Let's make it so you can read it along with me. I will set a king over you, and like all the nations that are around you, and you may indeed set a king over you, whom the Lord your God will choose, one of your own community, that you may set as a king over you. You are not permitted to put a foreigner over you who is not your own community. Even so, he must not acquire many horses for himself or return the people to Egypt in order to acquire more horses. Since the Lord has said to you, you must never return that way again. And he must not acquire many wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away unto silver and gold, and he must not acquire with great quantity for himself. We see this is what eventually happened with Solomon. We know David himself had issues with having a little bit too many women, had his eyes kind of looking all over the place, caused him to fall into sin with Bathsheba later on. But it's interesting that this is predicted in Deuteronomy that they were going to choose a king, and the people did choose a king. They chose King Saul. So when it moves on to David, it's very interesting to me, because it seems to me like they started with choosing King Saul of the Benjamites, but then the Most High, as that king failed, he gave him a chance. He gave him a chance to be the chosen, the delivered, the supported and beloved of the Most High. When he rebelled, it was almost like the Most High stepped in and caused Samuel to find David to anoint him as king. And while in a way, King David was chosen by Israel, which you could say Samuel represented Israel, it's almost as if the Most High gave the people their chance to choose a king, and then he steps in and chooses one for them to kind of like right the issues, because people look with the outward eyes, just like Samuel looked over all the first sons of Jesse and then all the way down to the last son, David. There were many great examples of men who could have been good kings according to the eye, but the Most High ended up stepping in here, and he's the one who chose the right seat for the throne. So let's read a little bit more here. Psalm 2 calls the Davidic king a son of Yahuwah. And this is, I believe, tied to Yah being the one who eventually chose the Davidic line, because we know that the Messiah was going to come from that, so it was very significant. In a similar way, powerful kings in ancient treaties called their lesser allies sons. It's very interesting. Thus, Israelites saw their king as a lesser agent, or a kind of like the one who was a mediary speaking to God. I can tell that this article is written more of from an academic kind of, outside looking in sense, based on its wording, but it does have some interesting things here. Israel is not always happy with the idea of kingship. Samuel's speech to Israel in 1 Samuel 8 indicates that the king has a right to take men for military service and women for domestic service, and a land and a tenth part of the harvest, flocks, and herds for the support of the monarchy, and to require state service by both the people and their animals. And friction over these things of the king, especially the right to forced labor, forcing the people to work for him, may have even led to the splitting of the kingdom. And this is in relation to the son of King Solomon. Later on, the breach of Jeroboam and Rehoboam, and I might have I'm gonna have to look that up. Son of King Solomon. Rehoboam. Yeah, I got it right. But in that story, Rehoboam actually kind of took this thing we're reading about in this article, that is not always a nice thing for the people of Israel, which was the servitude and the kind of the bonded servant thing where people had to contribute to the kingdom. That Solomon actually had a lot of that he was asking of the people. And the counselors came to Rehoboam and they were like, look, man, the people have been doing so much, just take it easy on them. And he listened to his young friend counselors, and were like, let it be said, your dad's like a little pinky finger compared to you, and you're going to just dump it all on it. And so Rehoboam ended up just cranking what we're reading here of requirements to support the monarch to the far extreme. And that's why there was a splitting eventually. But, another thing that was mentioned here is how the people were called in Deuteronomy 17. It talked about how you should set one of your brother above you, not a foreigner. And I believe, recently I've been really thinking of the question um, of who do we set above us in politics, in civil government, and here's my answer: is Mark 3:35, what the Messiah said. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother. Who obeys the commandments of the Most High, who is one of your people, who is one of Israel through covenant, through belief in Yeshua, that's my brother. That's the person I can be compatriots with. That's the person I feel comfortable setting an authority over top of uh, over my community, right? And in politics, we're often asked to set people over us because of their political positions, because of their the things that they promise us, right? But does this apply? My question is for you guys: does this apply to our voting today? Should we be voting for people who aren't walking and keeping the commandments of the Most High? Are they our brother? And is that a contradiction of Deuteronomy? If we're voting people in who are openly against parts of the Scripture, um, who don't claim to be of the same faith and ilk as us. So that's a question that I'm asking myself. I think it's very serious, because then when we do vote and give our passive approval, are we beholden to those we are voting for? And I know it's always kind of a slippery slope when talking about politics, because really you're only usually given two options of this, two wings of the same bird, and both are corrupted. Both are beholden to many, powers that are unseen. And sometimes we're convinced to vote for the lesser of two evils. Oftentimes that's kind of the argument. Oh, if you don't vote for one, you'll get the other. But it makes me wonder. Honestly, with the previous 2 years, it kind of makes me wonder how much voting is a scam. But this is just my personal question regarding this topic, and we see, going back to our study here, that the elders of Israel came to the king, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed King David over Israel. And it says that David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. It's very interesting, the timing of him becoming a king. It's just that there's a parallel with Yeshua likely being 30 years old when he stepped into his ministry time frame. Of course, in terms of the ministry timeline of the Messiah, I think there is something to look at in regards to how long it was. Was it a ministry of 3.5 years, as doctrinally we've inherited that position, or could it have been a ministry of 70 weeks, a year and a half cycle? I've personally leaned more towards a 70-week ministry, because I think there's some interesting things regarding the Messiah fulfilling each feast consistently back to back. Now, this is my personal position. A lot of people believe in the 3.5-year ministry. But also there's the parallel with Joseph, Messiah ben Joseph, right? Being 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, and was eventually made emissary over Egypt. I'm going to look over here to the chat. Somebody says, "Hey Jake, can you wink every time you read over something that's a trivia question?" I don't know. I want to make it as difficult as possible. This is going to be a big prize this week. All right, so let me see if we have any other questions here. All right. Any other comments? Yeah, somebody said here in regards to the voting topic and putting people ahead of us. I do not vote. I obey the laws, pay my taxes, I believe if you vote, you're participating in the devil's government. Um, excuse me. I definitely think that local government is an opportunity to start operating under these instructions in Deuteronomy 17, for example. Local government is a place where you can know a person, and or you could run yourself to change your community, whether it's city, county, magistrate, whatever, whatever those positions are. If you know that person is an upstanding, righteous, walking the word believer, then by all means, that would be when I would encourage voting and participation in the voting system. Somebody here said that you can't vote for because they're not ministers of Yahuwah and misappropriate funds for evil. That is something that just recently, with the law of Roe versus Wade being overturned, that's kind of an exciting good thing because Roe versus Wade, when it was mandated at the federal level, forced a lot of our taxpayer money to be used for agencies like Planned Parenthood. But now it's going back to the state level. There's much more of a local opportunity to break away. If you're in a state that uses your funds to pay for the killing of young ones, then you can move from that place now. So, but yeah, it's true that a lot of funds that are being moved around in politics are used to fund LGBTQ agendas, used to fund Planned Parenthood. Somebody says all my local governments are run by the Illuminati and the Freemasonry. Well, yeah, that is often the case. Maybe that's all the more reason for the righteous to stand up and try to change that landscape. Of course, I don't know how impactful we can be, but it's just all a question. And this is what the kings of Israel, the elders of Israel, were getting into when they brought in these king figures over them. Is the people you put in authority over you, they can often, if they're not righteous, bring in bad things. And there is one more thing I wanted to point out here that is very significant, is that according to the Torah, kings were not in charge of the judicial system. That is very interesting to me, because in Deuteronomy 16:18, it mentions municipal judges and officers, saying, "You shall appoint judges and officials throughout your tribes and all your towns that the Lord your God has given you." So while the king has a very important role, there is a differentiation between the judge, the judicial system, and the kingship. And what's fascinating to me, right, is it's kind of a check and balance that the United States government, in a way, employed. They separated the presidential, the executive branch, separated from the judicial branch, and then you have the civil government. So you have these different kind of separations in the way of governance to kind of be a check and balance, because when all judging came to the king, then there could be kind of a corrupted view. Perhaps there's a tainted judge position there. If a king has his agendas and stuff, then people coming for righteousness wouldn't be able to get the judgment that they need. So it is interesting to me here that according to the Torah, there's a differentiation between the judicial system of the judges and officials and the king position, right? And so when we're looking here in all the elders of Israel coming up and making David their king, making a league with him, these would have been the judges of their cities, the elders, the people who sat at the city gate. And so they had a role that was to kind of maintain their home area. And then, of course, the king kind of maintained the nation. But we have in the scriptures that the Messiah is likened to be our king and our judge, and the third option, right, the high priest. So we have kind of a unification of the three different areas of governance over Israel, which was the kingship, the judges, the people that made judgment, and the priesthood. And it was all brought together into one with the Messiah, who is not only our high priest, he is our king of all kings, and he is also the judge of Israel. So very interesting. So let's continue on here. So David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned 30 and 3 years over all Israel and Judah. Oh man, I didn't have a chance to do a lot of deep study, but man, I gotta tell you, there seems to be some significance with the location of Hebron and the reigning of 7 years and 6 months, and then eventually him reigning over all of Israel and Judah. So that I couldn't unpack it yet. I know there had to be something interesting. But yeah, somebody said, you mean prophet, priest, and king, all positions make judgments. Yes, that is true. I was just more so differentiating the roles of the society and how that kind of was paralleled in the way that the American United States government was formed. It was definitely similarities were taken from it. And yes, all make judgments. Somebody's saying here, the United States is Egypt. Yes, Egypt has characteristics of Babylon, the smelting pot of the nations. A lot of interesting things. Catherine said, 40 years reminds me also of Egypt's wandering for 40 years. What is the meaning behind 40? There's a lot. There's a lot of parallels with the 40 years in the wilderness. Kind of a trial. It's a parallel to the trial of life. So David reigning for 40 years, there's definitely parallels there. All right, I'm going to keep reading. So he reigned 30 and 3 years over all Israel and Judah, and the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking David cannot come in hither. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same is the city of David. And David said on that day, Whoever gets up in the gutter and smiteth the Jebusites, and the lame and the blind that are hated of David's soul, he shall be chief and captain. Wherefore they said, The blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So there's something also with this. I don't know if anybody has some insight. Why is it that David's soul hated the lame and the blind? I know there's, of course, the spiritual application of this, but what was it about the lame and the blame? Lame and the blind. Yeah, just kind of gets me because David, a man after God's own heart, you'd think he would have a merciful soul, as we saw that the Messiah was very merciful to the lame and the blind. But my only kind of thought regarding this topic is, could the lame and the blind be outward manifestations of sin? And David hating sin because he loved the law of the Most High, could that correlation be why these lame and the blind were hated? Because when we see that the Messiah came and he healed lame and blind people, he often told them after fact, go and sin no more. So it makes me wonder if there's a correlation here with the sins of the lame and the blind and why David didn't want that to have anything to do with his city. Oh, and there's an interesting comment here. They says they mock David earlier and say that the lame and blind could defend the city because its walls were so strong. Very interesting. Perhaps it was a boast against David, like, hey, you can't take the city of Zion. Very interesting. All right, so, and David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David, and David built round about from Milo and inward. And David went on and grew great, and the Lord of hosts was with him. So before we carry on, I wanted to show you guys this really interesting video called The City of David. It's a 3D presentation of the city of David where the Bible it has all these events happen tied to the city of David. So I just wanted to play this video. We'll watch it together. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this on your end. So this was the Jebusite city, the walls where they were saying even the blind and the lame could defend it. Up here, we have eventually where the Temple Mount was to be placed. Just very, very cool. Let's zoom this in a little bit. Here's a very significant valley. I'm going to try to relay some of the information as this guy's talking about it, but just really fascinating to watch. So this is an ancient building in modern archaeology. And the stepstone structure we just saw is located right here. So here's the modern picture. Here's the city of David. So it was a very defensible location because it was a sloped mountain basically to get up to these areas. So it was very easy to defend. It says here that because David's palace was on the top of the hill, it made him really easy for him to look down and look into people's houses. That's how he got in trouble with Bathsheba. Oh, man. If you Google the city of David or look on YouTube, just the city of David, this video will come up. I don't have a link for it at the moment to share, but you'll be able to see it. It pops up right at the top. So this is what David's palace would have looked like. David would have been able to look out that window, looking down upon the city. So David was out looking over the major hill up here, and I believe this is where he was like longing to build the temple. So you can see that he was out looking out over this possible future location where he wanted to build the temple of the Most High. And of course, this is where the altar was located. So this was the city of the Jebusites, which was then taken over by David. Very interesting. So if you're interested in, the location of the Temple Mount, the location of the city of David in comparison with where the temple is, there's a lot of theories. Is the temple actually located where the Dome of the Rock is? One of the best researchers I've had that has thoroughly convinced me is as Joseph Good and the work of Rico Cortez, who I've interviewed several times over the years. And they make some very impressive points regarding why the temple was actually located on the Temple Mount. And the significance of that was because of very specific locations of the springs that would have fed the mikvahs that were located all around the temple and helped wash away the blood during the sacrifices. And those springs were simply not located down in the city of David, But whenever you look at their location on the Temple Mount, it lines up like a hole punch, lining up over like holes. Like when you placed where the mikvahs were of the temple and you line it up where they were placed on the Temple Mount, it's just so perfect how it lines up with where the location was. So I would encourage you to look into the research of guys like Rico Cortez. Really gets into some of the differentiation between the city of David and where the actual true location of the temple was. Daniel wants a link. If you want to check out that video, look on my YouTube channel, Jake Grant, and look at the interviews I did with Rico. I've already uploaded them onto my channel, so most of our interviews were about that topic. Somebody says here, Charles Warren's discovery in 1687 of an approximate 50-foot, 15-meter vertical shaft not too far from the Gihon Springs, but within the walls of the ancient city of David. Awesome. So this is the Mount of Olives, and this is Mount Zion over here. All right, so that was a really interesting video. I'm going to go ahead and copy the link of this video and share it in the chat here in case anybody want to watch that on their own. Excuse me. All right, so let's go on over and continue reading. So David dwelt in the fort and called it the city of David, and David built round about from Millo inwards. And David went on and grew great, and the Lord of hosts was with him. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. This is one of the first times we have mentioned of the king of Tyre. And there's some interesting correlations here with the godfather of the Freemasons. if you can believe it, they trace their brotherhood back to apparently Hiram Abiff. A little bit of a more esoteric lore around this figure, but he's the one who sent masons to help construction of Solomon's temple later on. But the king of Tyre, some other parallels for this, which is interesting, is Satan and the Antichrist. There's some interesting parallels with the title, the king of Tyre. Somebody here in the chat says, I recently found out that Tyre is not Tyre, but Tyr. Tyr. Very interesting. Of course, as time moves on, pronunciation of different words has changed, and transliteration and translation has caused us to probably say things totally different than they are actually called. A great example is the word Egypt, or Egypt. The location was actually Mitzrayim in the Hebrew, and they knew it as Mitzrayim, but we now associate, Exodus from Egypt, right? And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people, Israel's sake. And this is fascinating to me. It's David identifying and recognizing the blessings of the Most High throughout his life, confirmed for him his role as king over Israel. Somebody here in relation to the king of Tyre posted Ezekiel 26:4, and they shall destroy the walls of Tyre and break down her towers, and I will also scrape her dust from her and make her like the top of a rock. Fascinating. The king of Tyre. All right. And these be the names of those who are born unto him in Jerusalem: Shammua and Shobab and Nathan and Solomon. It's kind of interesting here that it kind of jumps ahead in the story. We didn't get the full Bathsheba story yet, but it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, these are the people that were born there. Ibhar also, and Elishua, Nepheg, and Japhia, and Elshama, Eliad, and Elphalet. But when the Philistines heard that they had anointed King David over Israel, all the Philistines came up to seek David, and David heard of it and went down to the hold. The Philistines also came and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up to the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them unto my hand? And the Lord said to David, Go up, and I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into thine hand. There's something interesting here that I wanted to look at in relation to the valley of the Rephaim. It's also known as the Valley of the Giants. We have Goliath of the Philistine army. So it's interesting that Valley of Rephaim, or Rephaim, is a reference to a type of giant. We also have the name the Nephilim and the Caphtorim. There's various types and descendants of the giant race. But here it says, a valley beginning adjacent to the valley of Hinnom, southwest of Jerusalem. So in that video, if you can picture, southwest of it is where this valley is, stretching away to the southwest on the right of the road to Bethlehem. Very significant location as well. And the valley appears to derive its name from the ancient nation of the Rephaim. It may be a trace of an early settlement of theirs, possibly after they were driven from their original seats east of the Jordan by Hedolomar, and before they were again migrated northward to the more secure wooded districts in which we find them at the date of the partition of the country among the tribes, when Joshua came in and started fighting the giants. In this case, it is parallel to the Mount of the Amalekites in the center of Palestine, and to the towns bearing the name of Zimraim, the Ophram, the Ophanites, which occur so frequently in Benjamin. The valley of Rephaim is first mentioned in the description given to Joshua by the northern border of Juldah. The passage is important. The border went up by the valley of the son of Hinnom unto the south side of the Jebusite. This is who David took over the city of David from. The same is Jerusalem, and the border went up to the top of the mountain that lieth before the valley of Hinnom westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants northward. The last clause in the Hebrew is not quite clear, and it may mean the boundary line was north of the valley. The valley was north of the boundary. Let's look here. This view is further strengthened by the notice when David was hiding from Saul in the cave of Adullam. This is where all those vagabonds joined up, David's mighty men, right? We are told that the Philistines, no doubt taking advantage of intestine troubles, invaded the mountain fatness of Israel and abandoned them pitched in the valley of Rephaim, and at the same time seized the garrison at Bethlehem, David's native place. It was then that 3 of his warriors, to gratify a wish of their chief, broke through the enemy's lines and drew water from the well by the gate of Bethlehem. So this valley consistently is a location and a gathering place of these enemies of Israel. It's like, if you're going to be an adversary, go ahead and camp in the valley of Rephaim and we'll deal with you later, right? Let's see here. It says Josephus says that the Valley of Giants was near Jerusalem and in between Jerusalem and the city of Bethlehem. Very cool. Somebody says David conquers and subjugates all surrounding peoples such as Edom, Moab, Ammon, but never fully crushes the Philistines. Why did he not end such a foe? Ooh, that's a good question. Maybe because the Philistines were a much more broad-reaching group of people that continued to be a thorn in the side of Israel. Some of those other people were more likely tribal, smaller groups that were able to be totally routed. And I'm just looking if there's any. Where is Juan Carlos? He's. I saw in the chat that he's dealing with some sickness. He's trying to get over some sickness. So keep Juan in your prayers. I thought he was just taking a vacation, long needed break to spend with family, but unfortunately, I heard from the chat somebody in contact with him said he was dealing with some sickness. So that's why I'm your host today. What's up? Somebody said, wasn't the Valley of Giants near Bashan, the Pand of the Serpent, near Mount Hermon? I'm not sure. That's not what these articles was saying. Now I'm gonna have to look up Mount. I believe Mount Hermon is a differing location. It's the Golan Heights. So let me see here. The distance between Mount Hermon and Jerusalem is 191 kilometers. So yeah, these articles were saying that the Valley of the Rephaim, also known as the Valley of the Giants, was right there next to Jerusalem, while Mount Hermon was very far away. All right, let's keep reading, guys. And the Philistines also came and spread themselves in the Valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up against the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said unto David, go up, and I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into thy hand. This is something we learned from Joshua and some mistakes that were happening throughout some of our previous studies. Is people would go out into battle without inquiring of the Most High. So this is just another great example, David showing us that makes us understand that whenever an adversary comes before us, even though we've been delivered in the past, that doesn't mean we should just go full-heartedly after it. We need to seek after the will of the Most High and see if he'll be with us. Not just, peg our reckless abandon on the things that have happened previously. Somebody here had an interesting comment. The Philistines were also kind of pirates. Maybe they took to the seas and then returned later. I know that they are mentioned harshly in Zechariah's time and later annoyed Nehemiah rebuilding the walls. Yeah, these guys were like a whack-a-mole. I guess you could say they're always popping up, bothering the Israelites. It kind of makes me wonder if the Philistines were less of a blood nation and more of a political conglomeration. That's why there's a difference between, for example, the people that David took out that were of tribal blood, and perhaps the Philistines was more of a political conglomeration or something. I'll have to do more research on that. All right, so keeping on here, he inquires, and David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there and said, the Lord hath broken forth upon my enemies before me as the breach of waters. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal Perazim. And there they left their images, and David and his men burned them. Burn those idols. Break down those high places. And Philistines came up yet again and spread themselves in the Valley of Rephaim. Man, what is with this Valley of Rephaim? They need to put some like gates or something there, man. These people they're like, yeah, let's go chill in the Valley of Rephaim and try to bother them again. And then we see an amazing quality of David. Even though that he delivered them into his hand, he once again inquires. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, thou shalt not go up, but fetch a compass behind them and come up upon them over against the mulberry trees. And let it be, when thou hearest the sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees, that then thou shalt bestir thyself, for then shall the Lord go out before thee. Not before. Not, if you don't hear the sound, don't go yet. Don't disobey. To smite the host of the Philistines. And David did so as the Lord had commanded him, and smote the Philistines from Skiba until thou come to Gezer. So what this made me think of is a really significant scene that we have later on mentioned in 2 Kings that reminds me of what might have been happening here in the spiritual realm. Check this out. In 2 Kings 6:17, we have the story of Elisha. And Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his," talking to the servant, "and his eyes may see." So Yahuwah opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed, and the Lord said, "Please strike this people with blindness." And so it's very interesting to me that the Most High told David, wait till you hear the sounds above the mulberry trees, right? What was that sound? Why was it significant? Could it have been the hosts of the Lord, the armies of angels were charging over these trees? And man, just what a fascinating circumstance. While David might not have seen the angelic armies, maybe he got to hear them, the sound going over the tops of the mulberry trees, marching towards the enemies of David. Oh, very interesting. All right. So I'm going to just look over the chat here for any final comments on our read through here of 2 Samuel 4 and 5. Somebody comment here. The Philistines' double rows of teeth, 6 toes and 6 fingers, gives us a clue who they really were, doesn't it? Maybe that's why God commanded that they all be put to death. Yeah, that Nephilim corrupted blood. But not only that, but he said that when the people wanted to go and fight certain people groups, he was like, no, hold on, their iniquity is not yet waxed full. And I think that's perhaps tied to when somebody goes so far in wickedness, there comes a point where there's no more redemption arc for that. And so that's when it's like, all right, cut the cancer off, cut the weasel off. Let me see here. Somebody's asking about the name Baal Perazim. Baal means in Hebrew the Lord. It's a title, Master or Lord. That's why Elijah, when he challenged the people of Israel, said, is Baal God or is Yahuwah God? But in our Bible translations of that exchange of Elijah drawing a line in the sand, it says, is Baal, which can be translated as the Lord or Master God, or is the Lord, all caps, God? It's just so fascinating because of the ineffable name doctrine, they've restored the title Baal or Lord in the way that we refer to the Most High. And I know when I'm reading through, all these Bible translations, I try as much as I can to reinsert Yahuwah, the name, the sacred, the proper name of the Most High that David called upon, right? He wasn't calling on the name the Lord, all caps. He was calling on Yah. All right. But Perazim, I know Mayim is the waters. And so there's a lingual thing here tied to how the Lord hath broken forth upon my enemies as the breach of waters. So there's a lingual thing going on here. Heck, why don't we just go look it up in Blue Letter Bible? Look at the meaning of what was it? 2 Samuel 5:20. Let's look what the meaning of that word means. Baal Perazim. Somebody was asking, why Baal Perazim? All right, so smote them there. Mayim. This is what I was talking about. Waters is Mayim. Baal Perasim. What this means. Tools. I clicked the wrong button. All right, so Baal Perasim, the Lord of Breaks. So here's a little advice. If you start hearing that squeaky noise in your car, just, call on Yahuwah, my Baal Perazim, the Lord of Breaks. Keep my car from brakes from going out. All right, so the Lord of Breaks. Anyways, that was just an interesting little looking into what the word means there. Let's see here. Yeah, somebody made this comment. Ishi is the kind of husband that Yah is to those in covenant. Baal is someone who lords over and can relate to a husband, implies that there's a lack of love. That this is something that's dealt with in the book of Hosea. No more will she call me. I'll take the names of the Baalim out of her mouth, and she'll call me Ishi, husband. It's a differentiation of relationship. Ishi, husband, a loving servitude versus a lording over. Very interesting. Somebody says it's really scary that the Carmens. Oh, sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. By their dreams, which everyone relates to his neighbor as their father, forgot my name for Baal. Yeah, I mean, isn't that what's happened in the modern church? That we, as a modern Christian group, through innocence, kept in ignorance, we've inherited the titleship of the God of the Bible. We've called him Lord, the Lord. We sing it in our songs, and it's not that he isn't Lord of all creation. It's just that we've kind of alienated ourselves from the more personal, proper name. We've put a generic title for something that very specifically identifies him as his character, his commandments, his compassion, his mercy, and then we've replaced it with what we see. The Lord can mean a vast majority of different gods and different lords, but Adonai, or Lord, while it's a title, Yahuwah, when we call on his name, all of his characteristics, all of his commands, all of those things are associated with the proper name. So that's just the significance of using his name, just as David called on the name. And it's not about sacred naming. It's not, oh, he doesn't hear your prayers if you don't say his name. Or it says in Deuteronomy that we'll forget his name and we'll still call on him and he'll still remember us. But there's such a beauty. And it's sad that the tribe of Judah, Jews today, practice the ineffable name doctrine. Of course, their intentions are to protect it, to make it sacred. They don't want to speak it. But if your life is sacred, if your life is a reflection of his will and his commandments and a reflection of the Messiah, then using his name is a great light to those around you, because you are an example, you are an emissary. So we'll finish up with that. And hopefully you guys are ready to do some super fun trivia. I am so excited. This week we are going to be giving probably the biggest giveaway so far. I mean, we've given away some of Sierra's zits that she makes. We've given away some of my Simply Prodigal CDs. I know last week I've not been able to send out that prize yet, Rebecca. So just be in lookout this week. You'll still get that giveaway. But this week, guys, guess what? The giveaway is a set of Torah portion workbooks, and I'm very excited. So let's. I'm going to go ahead and get our Virtual House Church trivia ready over on this other screen. And get your phones ready. You'll be able to join live with your phone or with a PC. And hey, the faster you answer, the more points you get. Make sure you don't miss any or get them wrong. And a lot of the questions are from what we've recently studied through here in 2 Samuel, and also a few questions there at the end regarding this week's traditional Torah portion. So I'm going to bring this up on this other screen, and we will begin. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited, guys. Are you ready? Are you ready for the Virtual House Church trivia? This is a way to make it interactive and fun for families to be studying into the Word. Here we go. All right, so here are the instructions. Let me adjust my screen here so you guys can see a little better. Go to menti.com and use code 33909254. Let me get out of the way, so if you need to use the QR code, you can. So go ahead and give us a heart there if you jump in. We have a couple people joining already. I'm going to jump in on my phone just to see if I can win the prize for my own trip. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to just see if it's working. So I'm going to, as well as you guys join. So you go to Menti on your phone, right? Menti.com and type in code 33909254. Sweet. Give me a heart up once you joined in. Remember, this week's giveaway is going to be a set of workbooks that Rob published for the tour portions. I'm going to give a countdown timer here for the instructions to join. So we're going to give it a good 50 more seconds. I'm going to look over here in the chat, see if we have any more interesting comments. Somebody commenting, if you're cleaned of all unrighteousness, how can you sin after? That's why 1 John chapter 2 is so important, Lieber, is when a righteous man falls, he gets back up. But the wicked fall and they wallow in their sins. And 1 John talks about if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Yeshua, the Christ, our righteousness. And but we should follow after his example, right? We should start to apply the best, sincerest form of flattery is imitation, right? So as we grow in our faith, let's start to emulate him. So yes, it's possible to sin after you've come to a faith in Christ, but that's why repentance is the most powerful tool for a believer. And the dangerous thing is when people fall into a systematic repetition of sin, and they harden their heart to repenting of it, and they practice it. Matthew chapter 7 says, those who work iniquity, who practice iniquity. All right, so last little opportunity to join on here. See, we have 36 people joining to participate in the trivia this week. What blessing are you most thankful for today? Now, if you haven't been able to join, you still have a little bit of time left. The instructions are still here up at the top. Just going to make it easier for you guys to see what's going on here. All right, so go ahead and answer this question. Get a little bit of participation. It's a word cloud, and the bigger words mean what people are more consistently saying. So we got a lot of people that are very blessed by Shabbat, very blessed by salvation, Yeshua. Somebody who's blessed by he. I see you. Hey, laughter is a good medicine for the soul. Answered prayers, forgiveness, Torah, Yahusha. Awesome. We had another person join last minute. Okay. I'll give it another 30 seconds. All right. Well, I accidentally pushed 1 minute, but all right, guys, 1 more minute to join the Virtual House Church trivia. We got a big prize this week. I know sometimes people are a few minutes delayed in joining. So I'm just trying to give as many people opportunity to win these workbooks that Sheila very graciously, thank you, by the way, Sheila, for offering those workbooks for the Virtual House Church family. Looking over here in the chat as the time keeps going. Yeshua, Yehoshua, Joshua, but Joshua is transliteration just like Jesus, Lesus, and Jesus. Yes. Yeah, Lieber, I would encourage you to go and read 1 John is why it says, if we sin, we have an advocate. Because confession and repentance is so important for us to clean up our walk as we identify sin in our life. All righty, guys. Are you ready? Are you ready? Go ahead and jump in here. We're going to be beginning shortly. By the way, aliens are probably demons. Just saying. I'm not calling whoever gets the alien head a demon. Sorry for sometimes the un-Kadesh faces for your Locon or your whatever character on here. Got a Santa Claus too. Ho 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 is what they said they would shout across the stage before the devil would enter a play. So, anyways, all right, guys, here we go. We're gonna get started. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Answer fast to get more points. What was Saul's son Ishbosheth's two captains' names? Was it Beeroth and Ramsey? Was it Bana and Rechab? Was it Bezra and Rakesh? Was it Bob and Ricky? I don't know. Bob and Ricky. It's a pretty interesting possibility there. Did you guys do your homework? What was Saul's son Ishbosheth's two captains' names? We learned here in 2 Samuel chapter 4, it was Bana and Rechab. Good job. All right, let's see here who's going to be our first leaders. All righty. Imaging Lusing was the fastest answer. Congratulations. Followed by Jordy, Patty, Kelly Jenkins, Lillian, Nate, Denise, Dolores, Kimmy, and Dan O. All right, guys. Somebody asking, why is this channel running? I thought Rob passed away or Rob died. Yes, we are continuing on the Virtual House Church in honor of Rob, Juan Carlos, and I, by the blessing of Sheila, to bless the Virtual House Church family, to keep a community going. Somebody said that in the chat. Sorry, I had to respond. All right, here we go. Next question. Question 2 of 14. How fast to get more? Answer fast to get more points. How old was Mephibosheth when he became lame? How old was Mephibosheth when he became lame? Was he lame at birth? Was he lame at 2 years old? 3 years old? 5 years old? How old? Okay. 19 people got the correct answer. All righty. Here's going to be our leaders. Nicholas answered fastest, but in first place we have Jordy, Patty, and Kelly Jenkins. Congratulations, guys. Let's move on to the next question. Answer fast to get more points. Who was the father of Rechab and Baanah? Who was the father? Was it Reshnar, the Bethelite? Was it Jonathan, the Solomite? Was it Rimnon, the Beerothite? Or was it Gitam, the Beerite? Who was the father of Rechab and Baanah? Who was the father of Rechab and Baanah? Oh, we got Rimmon the Beerothite was the correct answer. All right, let's go on to the leaderboard. All righty. And it says here, Dan O was the fastest. Still in the lead, Jordy, followed by Patty, Dan, Nicholas, Lynn, Deja, and Noah Yoder. Congratulations, guys. Moving on to the next question. Answer fast to get more points. Whose head was brought to David in 2 Samuel 4? Was it Banah's head? Was it Rimmon? Was it Jeroboam? Was it Goliath's head? Or was it Ishbosheth's head? Ishbosheth was the correct answer. All righty, let's go to the leaderboard. Karen M with the fastest. Leaderboard stays the same. Next question. Where did David slay the false witness of Saul's death? Was it at Hebron? Was it at Ziklag? Was it at Endor? Or was it at Ramah? Where did David slay the false witness of Saul's death? Hebron was not the right answer. Most people said Hebron. The truth was, it says in chapter 4 that he slayed that false witness in Ziklag. Very interesting. The guy who said, look, hey, I killed Saul. Reward me. And he's like, wow, only 6 people got that correct answer. Let's look at the leaderboard now. Oh, Noah Yoder moving into the first place. Rebecca with the fastest answer. Good job, Rebecca. Followed by Jordy, Patty. Let's move on to the next question. Question 6 of 14. Answer fast to get more points. Where did David make league with the elders of Israel? Did he make league with them at Jerusalem, at Hebron, or at Shechem? Where did David make league with the elders of Israel? Watch out there. Watch the spelling. 10 people didn't see that M. Hebron. Hebron was where David made a league with the elders of Israel. All right, guys. Got to be careful. I know you got to answer fast, but make sure it's saying the right thing. Karina with the fastest answer, but in first place now is Patty, followed by Nate the Fix and Dan O. All right, moving on to the next question. Question 7 of 14. How old was David when he become, I'm sorry for the poor English, king of Israel? How old was David? How old was David? Was he 25? Was he 33? Was he 30? Was he 40? Or was he 27? All right, a good amount of people with the correct answer. 26 with the correct answer, 30. Remember, we talked about this, some interesting parallels with the Messiah, even with Joseph becoming a king over fastest answer, Nicholas. Good job. First place is Patty, followed by Dano, Nicholas, Jordy, Kelly, Nate, Karen, Lynn, Karina, and Cherylyn. Cherylyn. All right, next question. Answer fast to get more points. What was the names of David's stronghold in 2 Samuel 4? Was it Zion? Was it the city of David? You can answer more than one, by the way, but specifically in chapter 4, what was David's stronghold's name? What did he call it? Did he call it Jerusalem in chapter 4? I don't know. Did he? So the 2 correct answers I took from a very specific verse was Zion, also known as the city of David. Let's see. That's the first question I've ever done where you can answer more than one. So we'll see if I didn't mean to. Oh, we got a little swatch up. Dano coming into first. Jordy with the fastest answer. Second place, Patty, followed by Nicholas. All right. Next question. Sorry, that was a little tricky one. Answer fast to get more points. What was the king's name who sent David wood and workers? What was the king's name? Was it Hur? Was it Eglon? Was it Agath? Was it Achish? Or was it Hiram? What was the king's name who sent David wood and workers? He was also the forefather of the Freemasons, apparently. Dur. Of the land of Dur. Hiram was the correct answer. Good job. All right, let's see. Nicholas moving into second place. Karen M with the fastest answer. First place, still Dan O. All right, let's go on. Question 10 of 14. What was the sign to David that Yahuwah was about to smite the Philistines in 2 Samuel 5? What was the sign to David that Yah was about to smite the Philistines that he had to wait for? Was it that they would encamp in the valley of the Rephaim? David would hear in prayer. He would fetch a compass. There'd be sound in the tops of the mulberry trees. All right, 19 people with the correct answer. He would hear a sound in the tops of the mulberry trees, which could have been those armies of angels marching to fight for David. Somebody over in the chat here, Lieber, saying, if you try to keep the law, you'll not be justified by it. Right, well, if you don't keep the law, then you think it's okay to murder, to commit adultery. You know, the Messiah kept the law perfectly, man, so that we can follow his example in righteousness. Those who were far off are now brought near by the blood of Christ, so that we cannot live in our sin, but that we can follow his example to then grow and walk in righteousness, repenting in the areas that we fall short in. Nicholas with the fastest. Sorry, guys. I know we're doing trivia right now, but I'm like responding to people in the chat. All right, Dan O, Nicholas with the fastest, followed by Patty. All right, guys. Question 11 of 14. Answer fast to get more points. The winner will get a set of workbooks. What does the book Bamidbar or Numbers mean? What is the meaning of the word Bamidbar? Is it chosen people? Is it the counting? Is it accounting? Is it in the wilderness? Or is it in the beginning? What does Bamidbar in Hebrew mean? Now, this is the current Torah portion. Only 13 people got the correct answer. It means in the wilderness. Numbers. The little trick that the book of Numbers is, the Hebrew term is Bamidbar, but the meaning of Bamidbar is in the wilderness. All right. It also pays to pay attention to what the current cycle is in Torah portions. Looks like Dan O, Nicholas, and Patty are still in the leaderboard, with Noah having the fastest answer. Good job, Noah. All right, question 12 of 14. Answer fast to get more points. Who rebelled against Moses and was swallowed by the earth? This is tied to this current Torah portion that a lot of the world's doing today. It's found in the book of Numbers. Who rebelled against Moses? Was it Pharaoh? Was it Koran? Was it Aaron? Was it Miriam? Or was it Korah? Who rebelled and was swallowed by the earth? 15 people with the correct answer. Sorry, guys. You got to watch the spelling. A lot of people answered Koran. No, that's what the practices of Islam read, the Quran. Korah is the correct answer. All righty. Nicholas moving into first place, followed by Dan O, Lynn, Nate the Fix with the fastest answer, followed by Patty, Kelly, Dolores, Natasha, Jordy, and Noah. All right, guys, 2 more questions. Be on your toes. The winner will get a set of workbooks. And here we go. Question 13 of 14. Somebody said in the chat, sinkholes are real. Oh, yeah, they are. What did Moses hold up which healed the people when they looked to it? Was it a brass serpent? Was it Aaron's rod? The 10 Commandments? Was it a brass seraphim? Or was it a medical symbol? That medical symbol that's on the ambulances, right? Did Moses hold up a brass seraphim? Maybe. Okay, probably our most accurate answer to date. 29 people got the correct answer. A brass serpent. Brass serpent. All right, next question. Let's look at the leaderboard first. All right, not much of change up. Karina answering fastest. Nicholas still in the lead, followed by Dan O and Lynn. Neck and neck. This is your final question, guys. Here we go. Moving on to the prize winner. Whoever gets this fastest. And question 14 of 14. Answer fast to get more points. Who did the king of Moab summon to curse Israel? Was it Barak? Was it Balaam? Was it Balak? Was it Baram? Or was it Balak? Who did the king of Moab summon to curse Israel in the book of Numbers? This is the final question. Congratulations to whoever pulled off the win. Balaam is the correct answer. All righty. Dano with the fastest answer, but Nicholas pulled off the win. Congratulations, Nicholas. You are the winner of today's trivia and one of the biggest prizes we've had so far, a set of workbooks that Sheila has generously offered to send. So if you would, Nicholas, email me your address and your full name to simplyprodigal@gmail.com. That way I can get that info over. Congratulations. Thank you, everybody who's participated. I just love being able to do the virtual house church. Being able to do trivia it just makes the word come alive. So before we move off of this, how can Virtual House Church family pray for you today? Good job, Nicholas, once again. So if you haven't jumped off of the app just yet, there's an opportunity for prayer. Thank you guys for participating. Somebody said, pray for Sheila. Yes, pray for Sheila. For strength. Somebody asking that my grandma will get home safely. Somebody praying for daughter Nicole to have a baby. Prayer for restoration. Neuropathy in my legs. Clarity. Much evil heaped on someone. Right shoulder, DJD. For all the people suffering, family losses. Shalom. Somebody needs prayer for shalom. For doors to open. Pray against drug addiction. Thank you, everybody. I just, wanted to share this opportunity so that the Virtual House Church family can not only share their needs, but also pray for each other. Son needs prayer for a son, Brian, to find a place to live. Somebody needs strength, family, healing of a tooth wound. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing and being transparent. And just want to remind everyone, did you know that Rob made a server for all the Virtual House Church members to be able to fellowship 24/7? You can find the Discord server and the links in the chat. Chris, who's been helping out, moderate that, and all the moderators over there. Thank you guys for keeping the Virtual House Church Discord going so that people can communicate and talk. Somebody needs a prayer for their grandma. She's having trouble eating after surgery and doesn't want a feeding tube. Somebody praying for marriage, clarity, strength, restoration. All right, guys, thank you so much for sharing. And please keep in mind all of these requests as you lift up prayers this week. And I'll just say a brief prayer. Abba, Father, thank you for the Virtual House Church family. I pray for an answer to all of these prayers and these requests. Father, for blessings in our family, for blessings in our health, monetary blessings, for support. Father, direction, open doors. Father, help our shalom in our homes. Father, help all of these requests, Father, and help us be pleasing to your sight. Give us a call, Father, and give us the strength and the wisdom to answer your call. Father, I ask for all of these things, all of these prayer requests to be met. In Yeshua's name, amen. All right, guys. Thank you so much for participating in Virtual House Church this week. I know we often end Virtual House Church with the Aaronic blessing video. I still need to download Juan Carlos's version with the Spanish and upload it to our streaming service here. So this week I won't be able to play the video as we often do, but I can sing a cappella for you, the blessing to send us off. And I'll start with going, Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Sorry for the a cappella version, but I didn't have the video ready. But bless you guys. Thank you for participating in Virtual House Church. Thank you for being patient with just a fellow student, fellow learner. I'm not anybody's pastor. I'm not anybody's teacher, but I do have a passion to unpack the word of Yah with you guys and just share in this amazing platform that Rob Skiba put together and was so passionate about, and to continue on that work in honor of my good friend, in honor of somebody who had a big role in my life, to be a fellow worker and to keep this going for you guys. So thank you to all of your participations. And until next week, Shabbat Shalom.